report to you.
I invite you, if you will, to approach and sit at the table with the microphones, please.
Who has the answers? I've got the principal, Kathy Pelly, joining us, and Director of Business and Finance, Kristen Leo.
Thank you for setting aside time to visit with us.
Of course.
Let me mention a factoid about Tantascwa. Every regional district in Massachusetts is patterned after Tantascwa. The Tantascwa Agreement, which is called a compact, that's the term, is the first in this state as a regional district. All of the others trailed along over the years. And the compact is almost unchanged in the last 70-plus years. I think it's well for the Finance Committee to be reminded, and for the information of anyone viewing from the public, that the schools, each school committee has its own finance committee. It's called the Budget Subcommittee. And in both cases, the representative from this committee is always welcome, does not sit in the audience, sits at the table, and participates in the conversation, does everything really but vote. And Sheila Noyes-Miller Brimfield, the longtime Tantascwa Budget Subcommittee Chair with that committee, very forthcoming, as is the case at Burgess. I have yet here, at this session and the comparable sessions in the past, to hear a relevant, I italicize, a relevant question posed here that has not been asked already at each of the budget subcommittees. They plow the ground north and south, east and west, they harrow, they zigzag, and frankly, I don't know why you all don't feel worn out when those meetings are over,
Well,
because
we never
it's...
said we weren't, but it's okay. It's okay. We usually come out feeling good, because I'd rather answer the questions throughout the season instead of on town meeting floor.
Just lastly, before, with the chair's and the vice chair's permission, the floor will be yours. Let me mention that Tantascwa has, to use a private sector term, and so I'm switching languages, a market share of 99.9999%. And Burgess does not have that market share. Its market share is higher. The implications of that have to do with matters like, well, gee, let's close a classroom. Well, you can do that if you don't mind having 90 kids in one class learning the ABCs or the multiplication tables or who Shakespeare was. And you still got to plow all the snow and heat the building and cool the building and secure the building, all the buildings. So that turn of mind is translatable into English where it loses meaning. Ladies, the floor is yours, if you will, please.
Thank you, Larry. I'd love to start probably putting your agenda out of order. You referred to a few more articles that you have to discuss. You may have already voted on one that I'm here to say we would like to withdraw.
Yeah, Article 22. I was going
That
to
the
deal with
bus?
that. Yeah, it's the bus.
So I know the bus is a controversial subject. I completely get it, and I, like many of you, wish it wasn't out of operating budget. We'll get back there someday, but we'll do whatever we need to help you folks. However, We did just leave school committee meeting, and they did, at my recommendation, vote to rescind that article. We're now in, as soon as we look at April and get out of the winter weather and the times when we sometimes have unexpected needs in schools, and whether it be special ed or regular ed, we're now at the point where we're looking at what we have left for the rest of this year, not general budget, but more importantly, grants. There is a grant that we've got a decent balance that should be spent down by the end of the year, and in looking at it, we can fund the budget, the bus. So that is our plan. School committee agreed. They took the vote to rescind the article. So we will be purchasing what would normally be in next year's operating budget. We will use the grant funds between now and June 30th to order and purchase the Sturbridge/Burgess bus. We've still got the second one that'll come as part of the Tantascwa transportation line. Does that make sense?
So we're still getting 2 buses in the end.
We are still getting 2 buses, correct. And unfortunately, we are still getting 2 buses. We are still pulling one out of the Burgess operating budget that we'll need to have conversations in the future to get back on track. But hopefully, this at least helps us get through this year, and then we'll see what next year looks like. Okay? All right.
We would need
I have a
to,
logistics question. We're gonna leave, maybe it goes back to Barbara and Robert. We're
well,
gonna-
I know what's gonna happen.
Okay.
The Board of Selectmen still haven't acted on the warrant like we have. They're a little behind. So they're gonna open it up on Monday night, and the discussion is they will remove this article. But in case they don't, what we will do tonight is we'll reconsider it, and we'll take no action on it. And if they don't remove it, we've got our no action. If they do remove it, it'll just disappear, and everything else gets renumbered.
Either one works.
And that's what we were preparing. If there's a no action that night, you're going to hear nothing from us unless somebody says, are we okay with no action? Absolutely. All good?
Yeah.
So then I guess we roll with the punches, whatever questions you folks have. To your point, we've had 2 public hearings. Sometimes questions come that you didn't think to ask then. So if I can just maybe start giving a high level, maybe some bullet points, and I'm going to start with Tantascwa because Tantascwa is the bigger financial burden, the bigger financial ask this year. So if I can take a couple of minutes to just review why that is and where Tantascwa stands, that would be helpful, I think. So the reminder to you folks, I believe the problem for Sturbridge is the Tantascwa assessment, I believe, is up 5.6%. And that's a big number. The budget is only up 3%. Last year, the assessment was up only 1.9%. So I completely get and understand that's a big jump, that's a struggle for the town, and I appreciate that it sounds like there's support. Want to help anyone who doesn't understand what's behind that. The 3% budget increase is almost all contractual salaries. There's not a whole lot new there. There's nothing new. If anything, there's actually a little bit of decrease, because even to get to the 3%, there were a few things we pulled out. Nothing that we believe is going to significantly impact, certainly not a large number of students, but there are 3 positions, and I always make it very clear that we are cutting versus reducing our ask, because I know some of my neighbors ask for more and then they call it a cut when they have to pull it out. We do have 3 positions at the Tantascwa level that we will not fill, we will actually decrease due to attrition.
3
So-
FTEs.
Yes, 3 FTEs, due to turnover or retirement that we won't fill. We think they're in places that we're okay. One is a custodial maintenance between the 2 buildings, and 2 are classroom assistants. So no teaching staff. We think we will be fine. In addition to that, we did trim a few other things. We trimmed probably a total of another $150,000 between miscellaneous supplies and textbooks and some stipends. So there are some things, some activities, some clubs that have been going on between the 2 schools that the principals have been charged with looking closely at what the enrollment has been, having the least impact on students, and a handful won't be run next year. And we feel like we offer enough at no fees that students will still be able to participate in many activities. 2, we did reduce our freshman sports, not football. There's a large football freshman enrollment, but there's fairly low numbers in basketball freshmen and volleyball. So those, we're hoping, we still have JV and varsity, and we're hoping we're still going to be able to have the children be served in either those sports or others that we offer at the same time, same year. We have some other, we have swimming, we have track and field that has no max, and hopefully we can redivert. So we did trim to get where we are. And part of that was because we saw Sturbridge's assessment up very high and our other towns. So we want to do what we can to help any of the towns. But what's driving the increase for Sturbridge is a number of things. First, it's a shift in your total Sturbridge population. So last year, of the total students we're serving, secondary was 47% of the total. At the elementary level, there were 53. For next year, we're moving that by 2%. So 49% of the total Sturbridge students we serve will be at the secondary level. So that shift has the state formula shifting the minimum requirement. The minimum, and I am not saying we're at minimum contribution. We have never been in Sturbridge, and we are very fortunate. We know we have neighbors who are held to the minimum. But the minimum required contribution for the secondary for Sturbridge next year has increased $617,000. The assessment is up $511,000. So we're certainly not just looking at that line and saying, let's move it, whatever the formula says to move it. The percent share that Sturbridge has to the other four towns is also up a little bit, by about 0.5%. Sturbridge has 52.33% of the enrollment in that building. That only comes into play after we've gone through the minimum contribution. My friend Kevin and I will, for many years to come, have conversations and bubbles in our head over minimum contribution, but we've made peace, we need to move on. Because of those shifts, Tantascwa, just like Sturbridge, is getting, I call it none. It's the minimum state funding that 2/3 of the towns in the state are getting, this minimum $75 per student, which is, I consider, the equivalent of nothing. So that's happening at the Sturbridge end, that's happening at the Tantascwa end. The other interesting shift is awesome, but it isn't impacting our revenues. So reminder, for Tantascwa, we look at the total budget, we see what other revenues we can put towards that before we send our assessment to towns. Just as you look at your local receipts, your motor vehicle, what else can you put at it before you send your bottom line to the taxpayers? That number in the past, we do put some reserve funds, we put school choice, we put E&D, we put interest earnings, which has actually been a good line for us. We've been putting out-of-district tuitions for technical school. So the reminder, we have a technical school. We have for many years had other schools who want to send students to us be able to come in at a tuition that's set by the state. We will have as freshmen, no slots we definitely had some applications, it's decreasing a little bit, but we've got no slots to take in out-of-district technical tuitions. The good news is our own students are filling up those slots. So if any of you have been reading, it is a national, it is a state shift in Chapter 74 and technical programs that our students want to participate in. It's wonderful that they have the opportunity. Many of the standalone technical schools in the state have far more applicants than they have slots for. This is the first time ever. We actually will have a small waiting list of our own 8th graders, our own 5-member town 8th graders that won't be able to get in. So there's no way we're going to take an out of town just for the money. That's just not going to
It was in
happen.
the paper, Baypath, I believe, has a
Yep.
1,200 student waiting list in their district.
Yeah, it's huge. I believe Blackstone Valley had 800 applicants for 300 slots. So it is a shift. It's great for our students that we have these programs in-house, but it's this in-house shift that we're dealing with. It does affect revenues, so it decreased the revenues. We were able this year to fill most of that void with either reserves or increase that we have in earnings on investment. But that does impact that, and a level state funding left us in a place where almost all of that 3% budget needed to go to the town assessment / taxpayers. So that's really what's driving there. But again, because of that calculation in the minimum contribution, Sturbridge's was up higher. I always have this split. I have one town that has a -1%, and I have another town that's up 7%. So that calculation is certainly a challenge every year to try and work with. But that's really what's driving things at the Tantascwa level.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, absolutely.
If I want to put, I want to put my forecasting hat on. Right? So if I'm looking at Burgess, I can oversimplify it. What I would think the Burgess budget's going to be the next couple of years, I can assume a X% increase based on historical, and it's 100% of Sturbridge, we can get that. Yet, as you mentioned, Tantascwa impact to each town is how much is the overall budget going up, and then the population shifts and how it impacts that. So is there a way to maybe look at what's going to happen in the next couple of years, 2 years, 3 years out, that says if we just know at the end of this year, seniors are going to go away, everyone's going to step up, let's forget inflows in and out of each community and so forth, but just assume the current population just kind of ages up one more grade.
Yeah.
And get an idea as to, is our assessment going to continue an increase for the coming years? Are we peaking and going to maybe be one of those negative towns, flatten
Right.
out? Is there a way to get a sense for at least the impact of those shifts?
It is so hard. We certainly, come October 1st, every year, I'm always looking at October 1st and looking at the enrollment. So first October, when we look at the enrollment, we'll compare the 5 towns, and that's my kind of first heads up. Which of the 5 towns have a shift up or down in percentage? And so I know where the potential problems are going to be. But that's only after the minimum contribution calculation. Unfortunately, we don't know until January what those minimum contribution and target shares are, because they're connected to a community's wealth-based formula, which is a combination of income and property values. And Sturbridge is not the only, you've got others in our member towns that have some pretty high required target shares because of their wealth. They've got the same struggles with a formula that relies on property values. It's tough, because just because a value of property is very high, therefore taxable, doesn't mean it's easy for those folks to come up with more money to contribute to municipal services. But that changes, so we don't know until January or February what an individual's municipal growth is, which comes into play. But we certainly can look, and, come October, we know where enrollment's at, and heads up. The other things that we have the ability to look at 5th and 6th grade and see what's rolling up. So we look at that and anticipate. We also, what I can say is this revenue I won't say shortfall because we filled the void this year, but that decreasing revenue for out-of-district vocational tuitions, that's going to happen for the next 2 or 3 years, I think. If this shift continues, I think we're going to have, we had years where we had on average 20 out-of-district students coming in at a tuition of $15,000. Next year, we've got none as freshmen. So we'll still, for 3 years, have the ones that are already in and still be charging that. But I feel like for the next year or two, we're going to see that decrease. And we're going to be looking at a revenue shortfall, especially if the state isn't funding any more than they have this year. So I am a little concerned that we will be looking internally at what else we may need to squeeze or cut to deal with that.
So I just, clarification, 2 things. First of all, October 1st is the date you have to give to the state what your enrollment is, so that's why you know.
Right, right.
And in the case of these out-of-district people who are in already, can they be taken out to be replaced by someone from in the district? Or once you're in for your own?
Once you're in till you graduate. So these are, they came in as 9th graders because the tech program, it starts at ninth. It's different than school choice, where folks come knocking at our door at grade 7 to try and get in. Once you're in under school choice, you stay. These out-of-district technical aren't eligible to come until ninth grade because that's when that program starts. So once they're in, and as sophomores, they've already signed up for whatever program, carpentry, et cetera, and that's fine, because the only way they got in was because we first served our own member towns. And then we felt like we still had some room in our shops to take some out of districts. This year, or for next year, we will not. We'll just be serving our own member towns, which is great to give the students opportunities. If we continue to get even more, they technically could apply to other schools. But other schools don't have the space to serve their own population either, so they're not likely to get in. But you do have the obligation, any student who wants to attend a technical school, a technical program, is allowed to. If we offer it, they have to come to us. If we don't offer it, and they get accepted elsewhere, we have to fund it. We haven't had any of those in Sturbridge in many years. But that is, you occasionally see that in the elementary budget, because that's the way we know Sturbridge is really paying for just Sturbridge's students. We haven't had any in quite a while.
Do any of the students drop out of the tech program?
On occasion, a student, maybe a year or so into it, it turns out not to be not to be working for them, and they do move over to the quote academic side of the building, which is still the same academic teachers are teaching all of these students, but yes.
So theoretically, it's possible there could be an opening or two in.
Yeah, but again, with the
then
openings, if that
you
happens
would have
at
to
the
go
time
back
you're
to
a
freshman.
junior. Right, it's usually a sophomore or a junior that it turns out not working out for them. At that point, we're not going to bring someone in
Yeah, of
because
course.
they haven't gone through the exploratory, and again, that, with the technical programs, they're pretty regimented. It's like, sometimes you go to college for a very specific major, and you've got to follow the roadmap. Other times, you can just take that variety of courses to get your major.
But we still have school choice.
We do still have
On
school
both
choice,
sides.
and we don't have a waiting list. We were able to take all that applied. We voted slots up to 40 at the 7th grade level, and we got 38 applications, so we're good there. We also had, I think, somewhere between 15 and 20 applications at the 9th grade level that we did not open up slots, because we have a higher grade 8 enrollment. Maybe next year we will, but we do always get a handful trying to come in as freshmen. And this year, we weren't able to let any in.
And how does that translate to performance? 'Cause I understand that Tantasco's performance is excellent.
I definitely think Tantasco's performance is excellent. Unfortunately, there's measurements for the tech population and a separate database for the non-tech, which I wish was all together, but it's okay. School choice doesn't impact. I will say, to be completely honest, years ago, some folks used to wrinkle their nose and think that folks wanting to come to us for school choice came from a place where they weren't good students, when I argue it's actually the opposite. They're coming from places where they've got families who are looking for them to be able to be in a district that's going to perform high and well, so. But we don't, once they're in with us, they're in with us. We don't ferret it out. I have no data to say how a school choice student performs versus the 5-member towns. Once they're with us, they're just warriors. Anything else on Tantascwa?
Tantascwa, yeah, that's what we're good. I think we're good with Tantascwa.
Awesome. So interestingly, there seems to be more conversations on the budget that has less funding ask. And again, I'm not sure, where your questions are. I'll kind of go a little bit with my bullets. Just as we explained with Tantascwa, we know there's no state funding coming. And that is due, for the most part, due to a decline in enrollment which I think I went through, and I got, October 1st is the magic date, which, just like you're all trying to build budgets in October, in November, and December for a year plus later, that's when the state measures your enrollment. So October 1, 24, that became the funding number for fiscal '26, which some could argue is not awesome. In this particular case, quite frankly, we made out. Because October 2023, we had an influx, we had a higher population, so our funding for the current year was based on 50 more students than we have in our building right now. The numbers this year were down by October 1st, but the state, thank you, has a hold harmless clause. So when it comes to financially looking at what our state funding will be, they don't go backwards. We get the $75 per student. But if you push through the calculations, we probably would have been a bit lower because we do have almost 50 less students than we had the year before.
We're still sitting around 890?
We're close at 850. 850, 860 maybe?
No, 870.
But the enrollment by FTEs was 850 or 60. Yeah.
That's low historically.
It is low. So there definitely has been small declines in population. Pre-COVID, we saw in all 5 towns declining enrollment, which I think was pretty much was happening in the state. Then during COVID, things went nuts. You know, there was a whole lot of homeschooling or not coming. So the enrollment for those 2 years, we really kind of needed to just put aside, and now we're getting back to what we think is the new norm. But it is a bit lower, and I think in general, population in Massachusetts has declined. So all of our area towns are experiencing declining enrollment. Of course, our argument to the state is when we only lose 20 or 30 students, that's not a lot when you're at 850 or 860. You can't close a classroom, to Larry's point, with 20 students unless they happen to all be 5th graders, which never happens. What Sturbridge has also experienced similar numbers, I think it's about 23. You've got 23 students attending the charter school. Again, they're spread out over 6 grades. But we are very gracious to not have had our budget cut. Those 23 are still funded elsewhere on another line item on your part, right? You've got your charter school assessment is funding that. You get some reimbursement each year for it, but in reality, we know and certainly acknowledge that that's 23 students that if that charter school had not opened, would be in the Burgess building. It's just not a big enough number that we can say, you know, what do we cut? We still have to turn the lights on, we still have to heat the building, and you divide those 23 by the 6 grades, and it's 3 per grade, 3 or 4 per grade, and we've got 6 classes per grade, so it doesn't even impact the per class enrollment enough for us to have been able to offer any assistance on that. But we acknowledge that's been happening. That's a line that's gone up. My crystal ball says where you are right now with your charter school assessment is about where you're going to stay. When they built up each year, it started kindergarten to 3 and then built up. I think, you know, there are probably 3 or 4 maybe a year that want to join at the kindergarten level, and some stay, some come back. But, I mean, that's the only way I can be somewhat optimistic is to say where that line is, I think is probably going to be about where it stays, net the state reimbursement, where for the first few years, we were worried for Sturbridge that number is going to keep going up. What else have I got for notes of interest? So I talked about, and again, we're trying our best to help the budget that you have from Sturbridge. I mentioned Tantascwa when a previous chair of mine always asked, is this budget moving us forward, moving us backwards, or keeping us about the same service-wise? For Tantascwa, it's a tiny backwards. not enough that I think it's going to impact our service level or quality of service. For Burgess, it's about level in staffing and services, so it's not a move forward, but we're maintaining, and part of that maintaining is delivering and acting on improvement plans that we've got in place, and we've got a whole lot going on that's great stuff. But to that point, I talked about how the minimum contribution for Tantascwa shifted by $6,000. The foundation budget for Burgess is only up $8,000 because of that decreased enrollment. But we sit here and say, could we have leveled our budget because of that? I don't see how. I think we did the best we could. And yes, the bus is something that we all know should be in there, but I think the town needs to do what the town needs to do to get through this year, and we'll deal with it next year.
Madam Superintendent, would you please, for viewers who may not know the parlance, would you please explain what a foundation budget is and the difference between the total and the foundation, what that difference or delta represents? Not to give you words, just as a resident, it seems to me that that's the price we
The extra
happily
support.
pay for a better future.
You bet.
And so would you just go through that, please?
Yep, you bet. So the foundation budget is a budget set every single year by the state, by the Department of Ed. It is a pretty complex formula, but it goes through certain categories: salaries, health insurance, special needs, support your operational, your facilities. So there's a number of categories. What it does is it calculates the categories, and it also puts all of the students in buckets based on what grade they're in, and then there are extra buckets for if there are special needs, IEPs, extra buckets if they're English learner, extra buckets if they're economically disadvantaged, with the assumption that you get extra funds for those populations. 25% of Sturbridge, it's probably the same townwide, but Sturbridge specifically, 25% of the children in that building are in an economically disadvantaged category. So folks may not think that of Sturbridge, but 25% used to be called low income, is now called economically disadvantaged. It's in a bucket where you get a little extra funds in that foundation formula because there's probably a little extra services needed there. So the state sets this foundation budget and calculates the minimum per pupil spending that needs to be spent for the students. They then calculate what percentage of that minimum they believe the local town should be paying, and they fill the gap, okay? The difference between that gap and that minimum and the budget we're looking for is about 22% over that minimum. So that's saying the town has absolutely been supporting us in the area of 20 to 25% over the minimum state required, which we're grateful for. The average is about 26%. Some, as you can expect, far more wealthy communities, I've seen it as high as 40% over minimum. We are, in our central Mass area, I know of a number of school districts every year that are just served up the minimum required contribution, and that's all they get. So we're grateful to be at the level that we're at. Tantascwa, again, you get economies of scales, you get to do a lot of things, and we've got some other revenue sources. Tantascwa's assessment out to the towns, the total assessment is closer to 9.5%, 10% over the minimum required.
Thank you.
Good, awesome.
I just want to address one thing. You had talked about the buckets and all that. And one of the statements, I think I heard it in this meeting, but in some things, and then I got asked a question, and I wasn't quite sure. If 39% of the students from Sturbridge are in some type of special ed program, or that may include IEPs, but that means 4 out of 10 students.
High needs, so
yeah.
high needs is qualified by the state as children who hit like maybe more than one bucket. So you might have children who have special education needs, children who are English language learners, the socioeconomic disadvantage. So we get, those groups of children then make up what's called our high needs population. And that has been an ever increasing, especially over the past 2 years, number for Burgess.
Now, remember, your special needs or your IEP is not always what one would call typical special ed diagnoses. It also includes your mental health or your behavioral. There's a significant increase in mental health needs and behavioral issues, and that all falls in there also.
This information, I believe, I found it all in the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education in their statistical analysis.
The profile.
All of that information is there for the
Yeah,
thing, and I believe the number was 39.
yeah, yeah,
So, but that's just 39% of our students fall in two of those
in
buckets.
those buckets, somewhere in those buckets.
But it's,
One or more.
the information's available to anyone who wants to look it up.
So what's interesting, and I will, before I even ask, kind of just segue a little bit on MCAS. MCAS is important. We absolutely look at MCAS. We want to be better than where we are. Everyone in the state is struggling a little bit coming out of COVID and trying to get back to where we were at the same time as dealing with what the new norm is. MCAS also gives us data on those subgroups. For years and years, those subgroups, and they still are the biggest challenge, and the challenge that we get by the state and looked at and measured by is how are you serving those subgroups, which are typically harder to get to a level of proficiency. What we found, not only Sturbridge, actually in our district, our MCAS data that we got the results, now remember that we take the tests in the spring. We don't get it until October or November. Then we try to analyze it, and then we try and build improvement plans that we just recently presented to school committee. But what we saw in most of our Tantascwa Union 61 districts is we actually did really well in those subgroups, which is unusual. It's what most people are struggling. I'm not saying they're through the roof, but the improvement, the percentage improvement for our subgroups were actually really good and better than a lot of other communities and our neighbors. So we all sat back and we were like, you pat yourself on the back for a minute. But then we all said, well, wait a minute. We can't only be good on those that we focused on and we've been focusing on for 10 years. We've got to figure out how to improve all areas while focusing on something that might have historically been harder. And also remember that at this point in time, a large number of the students we're serving, I'd say they all belong in some subgroup because the subgroup is called post-COVID. And we're still dealing with students who had 1 to 2 years of a different environment. In some cases, we didn't even have them. They chose to be homeschooled. So we're still working that bubble through and trying to identify, I'm really ready to start really focusing on grade 3, because that's the first time that we've owned them all. And what we've done with them is a true reflection of where our improvements could be. But we've always looked closely at subgroups. It's always been a challenge. This year, we were like, ooh, our subgroups look good, but our totals weren't up as much as we wanted them to be, and in some cases down. So we build our plans based on that.
We still do portfolios for some of the special needs kids.
Yeah,
MCAS Hall, yeah.
yeah.
It does seem that over the years, and it's maybe decades, I guess, that the MCAS scores have been artificially understood, in that they're compared to themselves without reference to what the prevailing condition was originally that gave rise to an MCAS, because that is what ought to be the point of comparison.
Yeah.
Instead, there are people going in like whirling dervishes, literally and figuratively going nowhere.
Yeah. I'm sure my opinion will be unpopular with many. I very much respect and believe in MCAS or some common assessment. I think it's very necessary to measure ourselves, to measure our own progress. It was never supposed to be about the individual student. When the whole conversation about graduation requirement comes, it wasn't supposed to be about the student, it was supposed to be about districts being able to measure their progress and what they're doing. We drill down to the detail of that, and when we finally get all of the detail, then we can say, where is the population of students that need the most help? But that doesn't mean we're not working with all the others. So I very much believe in a common assessment, but it's one piece of what we look at. There are so many other pieces of data that we look at to see, and it is a test that's got a whole lot of variables. One example I just said, and I just said to school committee, I said, this is not an excuse. Nope, our scores need to be better, but we are one of the largest elementary schools in Massachusetts. The task of actually executing and implementing the MCAS testing is enormous. You've got all of those students that need to take that test within a certain window. So our technical needs, our staffing needs to give the students the right environment and technology to do it is more than a elementary school that only has 300 students in it.
We tested 200,
Yeah.
225 today,
Yeah, so in smaller schools, they have the ability to have smaller groups testing at a time. And so we're going, we just started this week, it's MCAS scoring again, and they also changed the test a bit. So there's a lot of variables going on, doesn't mean we should be ignoring the results, and we're not.
And we have multiple measures. We actually benchmark assess our children 3 times a year using various tools. One tool is the STAR assessment, which is a nationally normed assessment that we use to check individual student progress, because that's what we're looking at. We're looking at individual student growth at that level.
Thank you.
But I have never been one to say the only way to improve scores is to put money on the table. Our internal improvement plans are things that we don't need more money to do. To recraft and focus the professional development days and time that we give to teachers is really important. Looking at the curriculum, new math program that we're implementing this year was not a huge cost. It was similar to our math programs in the past, but you really got to look at that. We're evaluating our writing programs right now. They're not huge dollars to make tweaks to curriculum and make it better. So that's where we are right now.
Anyone else have questions?
Well, just a couple of points. Part of this committee's, charter role is to, do its best for the interest of the town people. And from a budget perspective, we always think about cutting. I have 100% confidence in the financials. You talk of the financials, we're going to cut, we're going to trim. That's all good, but my biggest concern is on the performance side. If you look at the last survey in the town, school, like in probably most towns, is number 2. Open space happens to be number 1 here, right? And south of, Sturbridge Village, but that doesn't count, right? So I got your data from the last thing, thank you very much, and all your initiatives, and there's a lot of tremendous initiatives in this thing. But with the MCAS, scores, I looked at it and looked at this, it's called the trend line. And for instance, 75% of the grades in English are down. Some are down as much as, since 2022, 46%. That's English, that's the English one. And we
For
talk
one
about math.
particular
And math,
grade,
you have some initiatives because it improved dramatically, but they had 50% of that's down. My concern, and for the sake of the townspeople, is, and maybe we don't need more money, but what do we need? Because the trend line is like this or staying flat. The initiative's gonna help. So I'm like looking, okay, we can't go from 43 to where our goal is gonna be overnight. I agree with it, but I think there needs to be a goal, and then say, and I think these initiatives hopefully will get us there.
Yep.
But where's there? I mean,
Well, and there, again, there is the goal, you're not going to hear me say, my goal is to get every single class, every single grade at 80 or 85%. Our goal is improvement. So we want to be going up. And also remember, those are cohorts of children. So most people look at grade 3 compared to grade 3. Those aren't the same students.
You're going to go down the line.
So you can't look at Burgess at the grade 3 scores and look at next year's grade 3 scores, because those students have moved on to grade 4. And that's where we look and track them. So yes, we want our score, as I said, MCAS is important, It's a piece. And I don't believe that our townspeople are 100% looking at our MCAS scores. That's just not what we hear from parents. I know you've got your national studies. Most people in education do not give relevance to those national studies because their comparable data is not the same from state to state. And as I said, the data just from town to town within Massachusetts, #1 state in education, by the way. I'm not saying our scores are okay, but the numbers, when you were looking at the worries about the ranking, if we are in the #1 state for education, and we are in the top 25th percentile of performance, that's a good place for me to start, and then we're going to keep going more. Are we going to get to the top 10%? Probably not when you look at those communities. We're probably not going to be in a Weston and a Andover and a,
How about Southborough?
Southborough's got a lot of money though, too.
exactly.
Southborough's-
And not that, and again, not that it's all about
Socioeconomic.
money, but
They get
it's.
12%.
Yeah, it's not only about money, it's about the wraparound services, it's about the support services, it's about what happens after school.
Right.
But we do everything we can while we have them, and then try and give them, longer days if we can.
Yeah.
So our improvement plans are in response to, some in response to the MCAS data, and some in response to other things that we know our students need and our communities need.
Did you want to add a comment?
Well, no, just Southborough's low-income population is 12% versus our 22 or 23%. So that does have an impact. And when Deb was talking about looking at cohorts of kids, so when you look at those year-to-year tests, make sure you're moving the kids. Different cohorts of kids look very differently year to year. We can have an influx of students who maybe are not, their primary language is not English. So especially when you're looking at a English language art reading assessment, those scores are going to look different for that particular cohort if there seems to be an uptick in that demographic at that particular time.
So I guess way you measure report, if they measure X in, group 3, that same group of students in grade 6, if they measure Y, it better be
Right.
up.
You gotta move them, yeah, you gotta move them. Mhm.
Yeah.
The reason that the reply was so full and detailed and specific is that the question covered ground that has been plowed in every direction by the school committee, which has the jurisdiction. Not here.
Well, I hear you, and technically you're correct, but
Thank you.
but we need to ask,
Yeah.
They're happy to answer, but
Yeah, they are, they're
We actually
well.
just presented, just before coming here, the school improvement plan for next year. If you've got enough copies, we're happy to leave you and share, because we're finally getting, based on what happened the first half of this year, to look at where we are, where the current population is, and what our needs are for next year, and have the school improvement plan.
And just using CARE when you're looking at, data, so, you can look at the US News and World Report data, but you also, there was a February 1st New York Times data that actually was a COVID recovery, and it was looking at different districts across the country and how they were recovering, and it placed you X number of years ahead. And Sturbridge was 2.5 years, where the average for the state of Massachusetts was under 1 year, and the national average was, at 0. So you got to make sure that we're looking at all of the data when we're looking at
And it's your data, so I don't really, I don't think you care, use what you want, as long as we can measure, budget and improvement of some
Yep.
sort. Because when I read a lot, and I read that our education system is stellar, and I read on Burgess, we're preparing our students to be part of global society.
Yep,
That's big.
Well,
sure it is.
My daughters and family went to school in Brussels, and they were speaking French at 4.
Yeah.
It's a big commitment.
Yeah,
And maybe
no.
it takes more
Yeah.
money and more resources. My point being is that.
It's not the same, though. Brussels speaks
No,
8 official
no,
languages.
What I'm saying is that
Yeah.
if other departments come in and are very aggressive looking for monies,
Yep.
be as aggressive as what you need. And
Yeah.
if you get everything you need, and it's gonna improve the school system,
Yep.
fine.
And I do think we have, and again, I'm very grateful, we're in a place where I think we can, and we want to be fair and reasonable. But I think the folks that have been here for a while know there's a line in the sand that we have come to you many times and said, we're not going lower than that until you tell us we've got to talk about it at town meeting and let the townspeople say so. So we are very willing and able to say, nope, that's the line in the sand, and
We ask when we need.
Yep.
We ask when we
Yep.
need, and we've had 6.7,
2 years ago, we were
6.9.
6+ point % increase.
11 years, we've had
Yep.
two pretty big increases, yeah.
Yep.
So I think you have the assessment plan, you can get the assessment plan tonight. I think the assessment argument has kind of been addressed. Is there anywhere else you want to go with it?
No.
Or we're all set?
The only other question I have is, and because I read this out of respect, is you got there's a lot of data you gave me here, by the way.
Is that the district
This was the
plan?
DESE target, set an ambitious 3-year target for improving students based on DESE, is that?
Yep, the
Department of
Department of
Education.
Ed, yep, DESE is the
So
Department
is
of
that
Ed.
going to be the mark now, you're going to be saying this is for?
Yeah, they
improvement?
do set targets. They do set targets every year of, again, it's like, especially post-COVID, what is our target to get back? And we have consistently met or above the target. Then again, the target is against yourself. This is where you are right now, therefore this is where we think you should be by next year or the year after. Same thing was accountability, but, I mean, attendance, but then our attendance was so good that we were our own worst enemy, because if your chronic absenteeism is actually kind of low and they set a target for it to be even lower, it's a struggle to make
You
it.
can't
Yeah.
meet it, you can't
It's a
meet it.
struggle to make it, and full disclosure, not every district across the state tracks absenteeism
Same way we
the
do.
same way, but we're not getting into that right
So if there aren't any more questions, Larry, I'd like you to move each of those line items separately, if you
Yep,
could.
sure.
Yes,
So you said separately, typically we were voting the bottom line.
I know, but I have a reason for that.
You want to share it up front versus?
Well, I'd like to be able to have Chris disclose anything he'd like to
Yeah,
disclose.
but before we go through any line item voting, in full transparency, I've got 3 family members on various school committees. Ted Goodwin on Tantascwa, and Whitney and Lindsay on Burgess. So I don't think I have a conflict of interest.
No, I agree, I
But,
just
just
wanted
letting
to-
everybody know.
Yeah,
That,
okay.
I'll
Well,
make
now
the
you can
same
do
speech
all of
later
it
on
if you
today.
like. Right.
One less
Thank you,
soon.
Chris, for taking care of that.
Yeah.
I'd like to compare numbers because of the bus. First, I have for Burgess, $14,058,739.
Yep.
yep,
Okay. For Tantascwa operations, I have $8,765,032. For charter, I have $2,000.
I don't do the charter. I'm assuming, is that charter transportation, maybe?
Yes,
Okay.
I think you missed transportation, too.
Well,
Yeah, Tantascwa Transportation,
yeah,
you
no,
but
I
I don't do the
haven't.
charter one.
I haven't finished yet. Then you can say I missed something. I have a number that I think is outdated by an action taken, you indicated, I think earlier today. I'm showing $84,064.
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate. That's the Tantascwa Transportation Assessment, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's accurate.
okay. Then where does this bus figure?
A separate article.
That was a separate warrant article.
That's Article 15.
No, Article 22, actually. Article 16, the town budget constitutes the Tantascwa Town Share, Tantascwa Transportation Assessment, and the Charter School Transportation. That's what we have left to
Okay.
vote.
Which the point being, right then and there, we're looking for a Sturbridge Tantascwa Transportation Assessment of $84,000 and change. Included in that is a $135,000 bus.
One bus.
Right.
yeah.
But the assessment is significantly lower because the state will give somewhere between 75 and 80% reimbursement for regional transportation costs.
So, the 14 million figure, we
The
agree.
Burgess is accurate.
All right.
Yep.
Could you repeat that again? Just the Burgess one, is it 14058? 7:39.
1405, 8, 739.
I got it,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so you're ready for a motion on Burgess?
Well, actually, we're going to hand them all now, because Chris has disclosed his,
For all departments, we've been voting the total line item, and we should just vote the education budget as a total.
we
line item.
already, yeah, we could do the whole budget, the whole 22,934,000. Well, actually, it's less than that by
22
35.
million, what's the number?
909,835,
There you go, thank
22,
you.
909, 835?
yes.
Okay.
All right. What he said.
So Larry, first, do I have a second on the 22 million? Kathy Neal?
LM, Kathy Neal, okay.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? 9-0. Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
very
for your
much,
time
folks.
and your
I hope the rest of your
information.
budget season goes well. I will see you all in 3 or
you-
4 weeks.
Yeah, if you just hang around for a second, because we will take care of Article 22 while you're here
Okay.
anyways.
I am going to warn you all, annual town meeting, first time it's in April.
Yeah.
So we have already notified the high school drama club that they cannot have their tech rehearsal on that Monday night. You will be surrounded by Munchkin Land.
So what is the secondary date, the fallback? You're
I
right,
don't
there's
know
always
when they
two
put
dates.
it. It can't be 2 nights in a row, because that is,
It's tech
that is the traditional tech week for the high school play. Their play is that weekend. So I'm hoping you all come to the town meeting, see the awesome sets, and want to come back to the play that weekend. But we have them taking a pause on that Monday night, so I suspect if it goes 2 nights, it's probably going to go to the week after.
Okay, no, that's, I was just curious if that had been.
Just letting y'all know, you'll be surrounded by, I'm
90s.
suspecting beautiful, lovely Oz.
So Larry's going to be the mayor of Munchkin
There
Land?
you go. Absolutely.
It's one of those details when people decide to change the chart, they didn't realize. that, you
Exactly.
know,
Wanted to give you a
may-
fair warning. Hopefully, everything will be okay with the tables, but it will be an entertaining environment.
Okay, thank you. All right, so
Well, I think the moderator has something to say about all this.
She will be the mayor of Munchkin Land, actually.
All right, so for Article 22, we have already voted to approve that. So what I would need to do is a motion to reconsider our action on Article 22.
So moved.
Yeah, and Larry.
Article 22, school bus, right?
Yeah, Article 22, school bus. I just need to write down my notes. That's,
And Malonic.
and Larry's the second. So all those in favor of reconsideration?
We got a 9-0, was that a night where all 9 of us were here? I don't have
Well,
the
you can all
notes on
vote
that.
for it. No, you're here tonight. We're reconsidering it. We're going back to 0.
Reconsideration could only be done by those that were,
No, it has to be, the motion has to be made by someone who was there that night that voted in the affirmative, and it was 8-0 that night.
Has to be someone who's on the prevailing side,
Yeah.
not affirmative.
Gotcha. I'm all set,
Prevailing
thanks.
side.
Thank
You're
you.
right. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so now I'll need a motion that we take no action on Article 22, school bus. Mr. McGlone, do I have a second? Larry?
To recommend no
And
action.
that's following the recommendation of the superintendent and the school committee. Any further questions or discussions? All those in favor? And that's 9-0. Great, thank you. Now we're all
Thank you,
set.
folks. We'll see you in a few weeks, if not before that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care. You too.
So that's check mark on Article 16, check mark on Article 22. Okay. Article 8, Community Preservation Trail and Bridge Project. Now, Penny, you're here and Brandon's here.
I have a PDF on it.
Okay. The only place I know.
It's two-sided.
Just do here.
There it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe we don't have enough USB for this. No, that's your.
If you want to just pull this one out, put it in there. Yeah, most definitely.
That's what I like to see. No matter what the situation is, if there's
PDFs.
Oh, is it?
Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
I put one here for Kevin, so you can just take one past that.
Didn't know I knew French, huh?
Comatell and some porter, Comatell Bourgeois, and. Make a little Dutch too. I can say, Shirley gets a bit. Excuse me, please, in German. Very close to Dutch. When I travel, it's like I know hello, goodbye, and hello, goodbye, please, thank you, and help, please, in a lot of different languages.
So you're gonna have to drive from here.
Okay, so town budget is done.
Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah, I have it. Oh, yeah.
No, it is 22 pages, but it's speed dating.
Okay.
No, I after, it was for a couple reasons. Okay.
So just for the record, go ahead and identify yourself and where you're from.
Brandon Goodwin, Chair of the Trail Committee.
Penny Dumas, Chair of the Community Preservation Committee.
Then we got Tom, right?
Yes, and Tom Chamberlain. You on, Tom?
Hello, I'm Tom Chamberlain, member of the Trail Committee.
Great, thank you.
And again, in full transparency, I'm related to Brandon Goodwin.
Yeah, but we don't really like each other, so it's fine. It's one of those things.
Great. Okay.
Okay.
Four.
So, yeah, we do have a 22-page slide deck. We are going to blow through it very quickly. I think it was in the last meeting, we, as the Trail Committee, were not prepared for that night with the content that after coming in here and realizing, the understanding of what we do as the Trails Committee and what we were asking for, we wanted to change the tone and answer some of the questions and sort of paint the picture a little more correctly for tonight. So we do have, I think, from the last meeting, the ask was if you have a different proposal to come forward with that, and we do. We're going to blow through some education on the trails and the project very quickly and get to the revised proposal at the end, but we just want to set some context of why we're coming forward with this proposal again and go from there. Okay. With that, as we said, this is the bridge that connects the commercial district to the Riverlands property. If you haven't seen, this is the list of active trail properties in town right now. Okay, so the 35 miles that we talk about is this list of trails specifically. There's 3 of them on there where we are building trails this year and will continue to build trails. The Riverlands, which is the property we're connecting to. Fisk Hill, which we're going to have a loop trail done on that this year, or most 80% done. And then the Grand Trunk sections we will be working on as well this year, just to set the context. Any questions around this?
I'm going to have to jump in there. So we keep hearing the goal is 50 miles, whatever else. What you're saying here is Sturbridge trails for 35 miles. You've excluded trails at other public areas such as the Army Corps property and/or whatever. So I don't know whether that gets us to 50 or not, but I wouldn't want to exclude those in the overall 50 number of trails within the town of Sturbridge.
It's a fine line because, the Grand Trunk actually is on the Army Corps land. So the Grand Trunk is included, so the Army Corps is included that. Wells Park and Opakam aren't included with that because we don't control them. We can't control what kind of trails they are, the quality of the trails. People ride our trails, they don't like to ride Wells trails. They're not the same kind. We have specs that we maintain for safety and use on those properties. So it's a different, but I hear you. It's something that is, we do consider a part of it, but we're going to work with the DCR and others that, over the next coming years to try and build better relationships with them so they sort of start to get some of those trails to our spec. Any other questions on this? Okay. So the reason this bridge is so important, and the question was asked last time, is the bridge going to be a unique feature for people to come visit? No. The bridge is not the unique feature for people to come visit. The trails are the reason for people to come visit. So if you look at these 2 circles, the Riverlands is the top circle in green, which is where we have additional trails that we'll be building this year, and that's where the bridge will connect. The bottom circle is lead mine, and that is just the top piece of lead mine. Most of the people right now using our trails are coming to the Riverlands, lead mine, or Hines Farm. As you can see, they're all going to be able to funnel on a bike or hike up from lead mine to Riverlands. And the Riverlands is literally in the center of the commercial district. So they'll be able to cross the bridge into town and go to the restaurants and ride around town and be in the center of our commercial district. The access points on the left and right with the other two red hashes are the only other ways for them to get from the trail systems into town. So they're starting either at the village entrance and riding into the commercial district, or they're on Holland Road and coming in from that side. But they're not in the middle of the commercial district, which is the point of the bridge. It's right in the center, and it's going to funnel all of our hikers, bikers, et cetera, into the center of that area. And or give people in town, like the senior center, access to our trail system in the opposite manner, where they can walk across the bridge and use the trails that way. Does that make sense? It's a critical piece of why we're doing this, because it's right in the middle. Okay. So, as I said, we're going to keep moving quick, but Tom's going to do a quick overview of what the project looks like and sort of paint. There's a few things that were probably misstated last week or last meeting. For just some clarity, we want to make sure you understand what we're doing here. Tom, you good?
I'm good. Is the slide up? I can't see it.
It is.
It's no longer projected on the screen. There we go. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Basically, this project is going to construct approximately 1,650 feet of trail. If you look in the graph in the upper left corner, that kind of dark rectangular somewhat shape is the footprint of the 1738 house. And the trail starts in the yellow from the newly built constructed parking lot at 501 Main Street. As soon as we leave the 501 property, we encountered wetlands in that whole general area, and reflected in blue is the first of two boardwalk structures. So in short, we're actually building 3 bridges. 2 of them are boardwalks, and one is a larger bridge spanning the Quinnebug River. The trail then continues, as you can follow it, in yellow to the location of the second boardwalk, which spans the old canal that fed water to the Yankee Workshop area years ago and no longer in use. It then continues along Highland upland property to the location of the bridge site. The large red area is the construction access. Because of the wetland issues, we determined it was best to come in along and under the power line that feeds the Fiskdale substation. This area is already cleared, and all we need to do is put down timber mats in the wetland areas for construction access. And that kind of rectangular shaped area right in the center is the actual area of major disturbance of clearing and grading to get the bridge and the trail in and to have construction site access. Along the lower portion of the graphic I think it's, let me see here, trail improvement. Trail improvement is that piece on the Riverlands. That's a section of existing trail that we will be improving, and of course, a little bit of work on the Riverlands property for the bridge abutment, the southern bridge abutment. We have obtained approval from Opakam Land Trust, the holder of the CR on the property, for all of this construction. So that has been fully approved by Opakam. So that's kind of the project overview.
Makes sense? And it's, to be fair, this is a challenge for Tom because he's colorblind, so the lightly shaded pinks and blues and so on, it's a test to his memory. But any questions?
So the yellow trail does not exist at all at this moment.
Right.
That's going to be constructed from outside the parking lot we built.
Correct.
The pink trail that's already in use and constructed. It
Yes.
just needs to be improved.
Correct. Yeah, and.
So why is that part of this project and not part of your normal maintenance? Because it already exists.
Because they're gonna be coming in with equipment to put the abutment in, so we're gonna have to fix the trail up after, once it's done. So it's usable today, it's a wide trail, it's almost ADA compliant to that point, but it's not finished. We have a culvert to put in. Once the work is done, we'll put the finished culvert and a finished surface in, because they're gonna really beat that trail up when they put it.
Okay, now I understand why it's included. All right, you can go on. I don't want to, there's going to be plenty of questions after.
Before you do that, let me take the green bridge out of that picture, right, for this question. If I start at the yellow thing and I just do that loop, do I start and end back at the parking lot, or is it starting and ending points at different locations?
So, I mean, if you come from the parking lot on the trail, what do you, please, if you don't mind.
Where's the parking lot on this map?
Right here.
This, and if I just had this loop without the bridge, what's
so
the
that-
starting point and the ending point?
So the red, which is that's just the access point, that's the power line. We don't have we have a right of way to build on that, but that is not something right now that is a town property or something that we can have trail on. That is just an access for construction.
So we don't have a permanent right-of-way, we just have it for this project, you're saying?
That's temporary access only.
I didn't hear him, I'm sorry.
Temporary access.
Gotcha. So that red that goes back up at the end is not going to be part of a loop trail on that side, it's just
access.
for construction.
access, correct.
Thank you, got it. So you're not creating a loop up there
No.
or whatever?
In future, we may try to get access to the senior center somehow and put a trail in some area up there to simplify things, but nothing right now. We're not doing anything.
Okay.
All right.
Good? Tom?
Okay, the next slide you see here is the projected timeline of the project if everything goes forward in the affirmative. We have already applied for the Mass Trails grant of $500,000 for this year. That grant application was submitted on the 1st of February. We hope to hear a decision by June 15th. That's usually the date when they announce the grants through the governor's office. Right now, we're in the final phases of permitting the project. The plans are at a 100% design phase. We've already made our presentation to the local conservation commission, have an order of conditions to construct the project. As I mentioned, we've got the approval from Opakam Land Trust to construct the project. Right now, we have our plan before the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Agency for their certificate. We anticipate a positive certificate on that to be issued next Monday on April 7th. And this is based on our site meeting and follow-up meetings we've had with the MEPA officials. From that, we need to get one more permit from Mass State DEP for the bridge certification, that it will not be a floodway obstruction, which it is not. But that's, just part of the permitting process. And also a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers under 404, the Federal Wetlands Protection Act, which we are in full compliance with that, and anticipate just a formal review from the Army Corps of Engineers and no issues there. With all of those permits in hand, we are projecting being able to go out to bid sometime around the 1st of October, with hopefully a bid award and construction start sometime in December or probably January of next year. Obviously, we're getting into the winter months, so that may play a little bit of challenge to the project timeline. Next year's Mass Trail grant application is due on February 1st of 2026. And then again, if we plan on applying for a second year award, and we'll hopefully hear by June 15th of 2026. And we are projecting a construction completion date of 1 October 2026.
Can I just get a clarification there? So you're saying,
Sure.
Right now, on June 15th, you're expecting a decision on a $500,000 grant. Next, February 1st, you're going to apply for another grant. What will that funding be asked for?
Same ask, 500K.
Well, it will be asked, based on, by then we'll know the construction cost, and we'll obviously apply for the maximum amount, which could be up to $500,000. But obviously, if we can't spend it, we can't ask for it. So a lot will depend on where the actual contract comes in at as to, how much do we need to ask for. Our plan is to ask for up to the 500,000 if we can justify that in the grant application process.
We will maximize whatever we can get from grants. Okay.
Kevin?
I don't want to disrupt the presentation anymore, but I need.
No, we're good. We can handle it. We're fluid.
Okay, then go ahead, Larry, then we'll go to Jim.
Sometimes a state grant will actually contain federal money. Do you know if this one does? And the basis for the question is what I think is a question mark nationally on grants from many federal agencies. So what is the picture best you know?
Yeah, Tom, in terms of funding sources?
This Mass Trails program is 100% funded as a state line item. There is no federal funds in this particular grant program that we're applying for.
Good. Thank you.
And I had a question. This process that we've gone through, was this, I know that 2 years ago at town meeting, we approved, I think it was $230,000. Is that what funded this study that we're talking about here? Is that what this money from 2 years ago was spent on?
Hey, Tom, did you hear that?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I was curious. The other thing I'm curious about is it says in the box for that meeting, for that warrant article, Article 11, it says estimated costs for the construction of the bridge. Maybe Tom would, and it's a ballpark, but I just want to know if we're still in the ballpark. It says between $500,000 and $600,000. That would just be for the bridge.
Yeah, so between the two boardwalks, so the two shorter bridges over the blue and the bridge, it's about 1.1 just for those three structures.
So the short answer is the bridge itself, yes. I'll be getting at the end of this towards the end of this presentation is the actual construction estimate prepared by Ty and Bond on the various line items, so to speak, going into this project. So I can better, you'll be able to see those numbers and have a copy of that in an upcoming slide.
Thank you, Tom.
Any other questions? I'm going to zoom through. So Tom, I'll take these and just zoom through. So these are pictures from the bridge that was built in Brimfield.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the identical bridge that we're doing.
Exactly. We went and looked at.
Yeah. So, so just so you can slide through these, that just gives you a feel. So this is after it's complete. So we're going to look like that. So this is a good example of the boardwalk, the two sections of boardwalk that we'll be building. And one's longer and the other's a little shorter. And then this is what the end trail bed will look like, just to give you a feel for the picture of what these things end up as. So when we talk about the final construction of a trail, for ADA compliance and so on, this is what it'll look like, if it's not a bridge.
Or like all of the other.
Yeah, like the Arbutus trails and many of them, yeah. Okay, thanks, Chris, if you don't mind. So a couple quick questions that were asked last time. One is the Ed Calcutt Bridge we've had for 20 years down off of the Army Corps land. We've put a few screws in the last 20 years. That is the only maintenance we've done on that bridge. So there was a few, screws that had to be replaced, and that was it. And then, just as a clarification, one more thing, Chris, we've asked for maintenance costs for 2025, for physical 2026, we've asked for $4,800. We have, and I'll talk about volunteers in a second, the point, for materials and others, that's what we require. Once the trails are done, the cost to maintain them drops dramatically once they're constructed, their finished surface and so on.
4,800 is not just for the Calcutt Bridge.
No, the 4,800 is just the Sturbridge Trail maintenance that we do, nothing to do with the Calcutt Bridge, to be clear. So for all of the Sturbridge trails that are finished. So, does that make sense? Okay, please, Chris. So, why is that? One of the reasons is we mix between the construction, volunteer hours between construction and maintenance. we end up with about $120,000 this past year of volunteer time. And so we had a great spike this year because we've had a few volunteers that have really done a lot on the maintenance side in the past year and so on, and maintaining the trails.
How do you figure that amount?
Tom, you want to talk about how we calculate that?
Thank you.
So there is a National Volunteer Clearinghouse that's approved by all of the federal agencies, and they establish a volunteer hourly rate for volunteers, and there's a national rate, and then they also set individual state rates. And for all of these years, we have been using that state of Massachusetts volunteer rate, which for this year is $40.97 an hour.
And then we track the entire committee, our volunteer squad, everything reports in. Like today, they went in and cut some down trees, and they reported 2 hours worth of work, and that's tracked on a daily basis.
Just to clarify, so a volunteer bookkeeper and a volunteer heavy equipment operator are both quoting at $40 and change an hour? How does it work?
So Tom,
The short answer to that is yes. The longer answer is if it's a heavy equipment operator with a particular piece of equipment, that rate is calculated at the going rate locally here in the Sturbridge area. If we were to go out and contract that piece of equipment with an operator, that's the rate we use. In the past, when the highway DPW director goes out for bid, like she does for snow plowing equipment, she gets those rates that the town would pay, and that's the rate we use. So there is a little bit of flexibility in some of those rates, but whether you're operating a chainsaw or being the accountant that keeps track of these hours for us, yes, it's at $40.97 an hour, the same rate.
okay,
I mean, this is, yeah, go ahead.
you good?
Well, I say it every year. You have a large group of volunteers to help, maintain and construct these things. And it's a great thing. If you lose that group of people, and you then say, I got a bunch of trails, but I can't get the volunteers out here anymore for whatever reason, but we still need to maintain and so forth, and now we need to start hiring somebody and contracting out for this cost and higher costs, I think there's a different story on how long the town may be willing to continue to put that much money into that resource. So this works very well, given the large number of volunteers you have. It's a different story on how we would operate and maintain these things if we had to fund it completely from tax dollars.
I guess I would say to that, you don't have to, but you're going to want to. So maybe I'm not going to volunteer as much anymore in 10, 20 years, but my kids' grandkids are going to volunteer. When you have such an asset in your community, you're not going to want to see it go to pot, but the community doesn't have to step up and start paying $40 an hour, or 20 years from now, $80
As long as
an
your
hour.
kids and grandkids in mind do the same thing and
Well, I
follow
think,
along.
Exactly.
so actually, I'll answer that question a little further too. I have some more content that I want to keep moving, just because I don't want to waste your, I know you guys, long nights and so on, but we have a little more content to Penny's point on why people want to stay involved, because, and then just traffic, everybody, we've talked about this. We had 63,000 people on the trails last year. It's up from the previous year, but it's so maybe it's panning out there. We're expecting it with some more trail activity and more building that's going to start to increase over time, but.
That spurred a question I had last time that I didn't ask. How do you differentiate in that 63,000 who's local and who's coming in from a fair distance from geographic
So I'll
range?
talk about that in the next slide.
Excellent, thank you.
No problem.
And may I ask, is this just like a ticker?
Yeah, we have 6 to 8 tickers on different properties at different entrances, and we track people coming in.
Okay.
And so, we have equations that we're using right now. If you got 4 legs, we knock you down to 2. If you're walking in versus walking out, cut it in half, and so on.
Well, just to be devil's advocate, I mean, one person can kind of go back and forth, right?
If they, there's.
I don't know why they
I'll
want
give you
to.
a 5% error, if you want to throw a 5% error in there for someone that walks around the gate a few times, that's,
No worries.
to a point,
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. So on that, one of the things that we did is, right now, our estimates are that from the license plates we see where people are coming from Connecticut or other areas, and also the people we talk with and the events we hold, right now, our breakdown, and these are things that we're going to work on through surveys and refining over the coming years. We're at a point right now, of those 63,000, we're saying that about 20% are coming from longer distances, 30% are from local towns, and then about 50% are in town, is sort of our estimate in terms of people hiking and using the properties, biking and hiking. And with that, some of the research we've done, if you start to put basic numbers of what people are spending in town in there, and we put some conservative figures in there, and we think right now that the trails are probably bringing in about 200 grand of people spending money that they wouldn't have spent otherwise in town. Because if you go out in town for an event, if we hike the trails, we stop and get a coffee. Normally, we wouldn't stop and get a coffee if we're not leaving the house. So there's just different ways to look at it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but these are models that we're going to start to build and use as a baseline for conversation.
So you figure out the distribution of longer distances, local towns and in town by, what, every month, once a month you go to each one of the parking lots?
So we have, right now it's based on feel. So we see a lot of the parking lots, on the weekends, we'll see, a third of the parking lot is from Connecticut or other areas and so on. So, and based on some of the events, we've had people that, like the biking event, we knew that 50% of the people that rode on the trails, for the NIMBA event were from more than an hour away. So just, a balance at this point. But to that point, we need to come up with better ways to get that information.
Website, right? You have a website?
Yeah.
How can you track where people are going?
Actually, we get better activity that way through Facebook. We're tracking, so not as much of where their locations are through the website, but definitely on Facebook, and we're able to track a lot of people that are commenting, with the 3,000 or 4,000 people that follow us on Facebook. Any questions on this? It's rudimentary, but it's starting point. Okay? Chris, will you slide the next, please? So the point that's important here, back to the question on what's going to happen in 5 years. We finish these trails, no one else wants to volunteer. That's more of a real doomsday mentality, because what they say we've done a lot of research in terms of how do you assess the economic value or what it does for the commercial district in a town. And one of the themes that I like is the ripple effect, because you start to build out different use cases on properties. So you have different activities, like we have the NIMBA event, like you have, the 5K, and some other things I'm going to show in a minute. But when you have single track, when you have ADA compliance, when you have trails that horses can use, you have different groups coming from different areas to use the properties. And if you have multiple properties, you're spreading them out across the town with different use cases. They call that the ripple effect, because the more pebbles you throw in, then you have different profiles of people coming in and doing different things in town. And so with the NIMBA riders, we know that they come in and hit all of our breweries. We've seen it, it's factual, We know that we have people that come in for the 5K or other events, and they'll stay for dinner and do other things of that nature. So that's the expectation. What we want to do is expand that and become more sophisticated around how we're tracking what people are doing. And if you go to the next slide, Chris. I talked about, bikers, hikers, and ADA compliance, which we're very unique in the fact that we have a lot of different levels of trail, and we have a lot of ADA compliant trail. That is what makes Sturbridge unique. It's not as common as you'd think. And we know, as an example, last year was the first NIMBA ride they did. This year, they're expecting a couple hundred people instead of 150. But the point is, you start to hold a couple of those a year, and you're spreading the use of the trails across different times of the year and different use cases and areas and so on. If you slide to the next one. So this is where we're building to. If you think longer term, Block Island does these glass floats. They have 550 out right now. It draws in to Block Island $5,000 to $10,000 people per year. They're traveling to Block Island to look for glass balls. Never in my life would I have, if you told me that, I mean, I would have never done that, you know, but they're doing it. And we have a lot of people, and so right now, we have a group in Sturbridge, they presented to 4 or 5 committees already. Those acorns on the right side, they're calling it the Longevity Project, they want to hide those throughout the trail system in Sturbridge. They're this big, and I think I mentioned this before. They are weather-proof, it can sit out all year, they're gonna be dated and numbered, okay? And so the point is that activities like this will, on a regular basis, draw people in to use our properties. And those people, if you're traveling to get a glass ball or traveling to get a giant acorn, you are going to stay for dinner. You're going to come in and spend money in town, stay overnight. I mean, there are people that spend the weekend in Block Island just searching for these glass balls. And so they've presented to us. We've held them, and it's they're $50 a pop to make. And so the STA is going to start considering funding it, and the trail committee is going to help support how they do it and so on. But the point is, it expands the group of people that want to use our properties. It's not just hikers and bikers now, it's people that want to explore and look for giant acorns in the woods with their kids, type of thing. And so that's why a situation like the bridge, they're going to funnel up from Lead Mine through Riverlands, right into the downtown, walk around town, and then go back to their car and either stay at a hotel and go look again the next day or go home. But that's, the broader vision of what we're getting towards.
Are you getting any type of assistance or input from economic development? Are they working with you in any way to help?
Can I jump in on that?
Yes.
So I did after the last meeting, we discussed this with FinCom. I did speak with Terry. Terry is is in the process of designing some type of a survey that we can actually put out at the hotels to track this as well and look at what we are getting in, who is staying. Are they coming when they come for a wedding? Are they using the trails? Did they come for the trails? And getting an assessment of that to look at the hotels and also work with the campgrounds. I also will say Terry sat in on the Longevity Project meeting with us the other day, as well as Conservation. So he will be working with the people kicking off this project, and he's going to lead it to Sturbridge Tourism Association for their assistance in it as well. So
Robin,
Terry will be taking the lead on helping get this project up and running and sustainable.
So Robin, could you just, for everyone who's going to watch this now live or in the future, tell us who Terry is?
Yeah, Terry Masterson is our economic development coordinator.
Thank you.
Would you discuss, please, the experience over time of medical emergencies and the need to call police for a purse snatching or an assault?
In terms of what we've had on our properties, so we've had, Tom, do you know how many break-ins we've had on in the parking lots?
It's been very sporadic. It has happened over the last 10 years a couple times, but it's not something that pops up annually. But it does happen any more than, someone else having their wallet stolen shopping at Walmart.
What about emergency
these
services?
things, it's part of what we're doing, One of our challenges with people getting lost are people who are not really prepared themselves to be out on our trails, given their either medical condition or the time, their trail knowledge, their ability, to read a map and know where they're at. We've had a few medical emergencies, but those have been addressed promptly because our police and fire departments have keys to get into the gates, and to our ability, we reach out and coordinate with both of the chiefs for any training they may want or whatever on our trail systems and what have you. So does it happen? Absolutely. Is it very often? Not really, but it does happen.
One of the things that, with finishing trails and getting the trails to finish surface, people, if you run into a wet spot, they'll go off on a side trail, and sometimes people we'll veer off onto a different trail and things like that and lose track of where they were. And so one of the things that, with the work we're doing on lead mine this year, is finishing all the wetland crossings and things like that. We'll start to see people staying on the main trails more and so on. So those are things that we're very focused on, making sure that they're very accessible, people know where they are all the time, and continue to improve upon it, because you just have to.
So, appreciate the efforts to bring new activities, draw people to use the trails, and finding the right mechanism to get it out to a broader audience, not just those that are trail-focused and disturbance-focused, but those who may not use the trail, but might want to see what the activity is and get out there would be helpful. The other bigger picture, and it's all trails-focused, right? But what I'm missing is it'd be nice to add a recreational element in here, like a playground or something else where a family can go and someone can take the bike ride and do whatever else, and, the rest of the family can have a playground, some other recreational type thing that's kind of tied to that, where people can come back.
We've had a number of conversations with Robin around.
Work that in somewhere along the way with the recreational folks. I think that would be another nice little tie and bring a different draw of people in.
We've talked with Robin quite a bit around areas where we could put a dog park and people could access certain trail systems, because you have to have water and electricity, so that sort of limits us on some of that, but totally agree with that. We're also doing, we have some of the Boy Scouts building kid balance beams and things like that in the woods and so on. So there are a few things like that going on, but we're really around that's when we have to start partnering with the rec committee and start partnering and so on. So we try to do it and be open to different things, but it's just that balance of how much time we're spending outside of the trails versus,
And maybe this way to find the balance and have another group with a focus on that, kind of.
Yeah, we've met.
Co-locate you in a way to kind of draw the two separate goals together.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things on Fisk Hill is, the dollhouse, we talked about that being a place where you could have parking, electricity and water, and that could be the start of a dog park. And that would fall under the recreation committee, but we're trying to figure out how we can help make that work. So little things like that we definitely want.
We also were looking at, and working with a company that builds little pump tracks, bicycle pump tracks. Brandon, I don't know if you mentioned that. I may have missed it. Oh, and the location was issue. We were ready to look at one right off the trails, but we had a right-of-way issue off the state highway on 15. But they're relatively inexpensive, and it's the kind of thing that, a family that has a 5-year-old kid that's not really ready to take his bicycle on the trails, one parent could go out on the trails with the kid, and another parent could stay with the little one on the pump track. So we have, to your point, I think it's really important to meld that and make it truly family events, whether it's recreation or trails. So we do agree, and we have looked at different things. Right now, it's just logistics holding us up more than anything, and we're trying to work through those.
Yeah, it's tough.
That's part of why with Fisk Hill, we want to work with the company. I'm trying to get an appointment to see if they're still willing to work with us on some of that land.
Yeah, I think there's no question the town, like I said before, previous meeting, that survey-wise, open space and trails is like number one, put it that way. I think we gotta be a little careful putting the bridge in as a commercial type venture, because even for $200,000 we talked about right now, it would take 10 years to pay for the bridge if you want to look at a commercial venture.
Oh, no,
And if you got 50,000 more, it would take 40 years for the bridge to pay.
I'm not saying
So
that's.
outside of the townspeople.
A lot of this has nothing to do with the actual project in front of us. A lot of this is future speak. So let's just let him finish his thing.
Yeah, I think the picture, the last meeting, there were a lot of questions around what's the value of a bridge? And the value of connecting the property to the commercial district and driving that, whether you think it's, whether the numbers are exact or not, there is value, you just have to, it's just a matter of what that value is. Chris, I already talked about funneling up through the thing. So at this point, we talked about grants. This is the history of our grants over the last, since I think 2003. And we've received about $2 million in grants, okay? And the point on this slide is that we have a really good track record with getting grants, and we have a really good track record of returning money to the town, to CPC specifically. And on the left side, we've given $700,000 back in the last 3 years to the town because we've received grants and the bids came in low enough where we were able to return that money. In this year, we're returning 500 grand, and that's part of why we're able to come back today with a different proposal. We are, the two bids that we've opened, we have $500,000 that's going back to the CPA funds. And so with that, jump to the next. So Tom, you want to jump in here, please?
Yep, so, this would be the line item, cost estimate of constructing, all of this project. I'm not sure how well they can see it, on the screen, but I know Brandon is giving you folks copies of this afterwards, be available to you, but if you look down on the list, items 11 and 12, are the cost of the, two boardwalks and the one bridge, and you'll see where that, alone, where one was at 560,000 and the other one is at 550,000. So that's a little over 1.1 million just for those particular structures themselves. The site access, because of the wetlands, we needed to bring in timber mats for that construction access, that red line, or that pink line, I'm sorry if my colors are off, but along the National Grid easement, that came in at 125,000. And then you can see all of the other remaining amounts, from pedestrian benches to, the other parts that need to be construction, the gravel for the trails, the wetland replication, the replanting that's required because of the clearing we did to get the construction staging area in, and what have you. So this is where the total cost of the project is now at $2,149,000. What we did from the previous estimate is we lowered our contingency from 15% to 10%, and we are reducing the width of the raised bridges, the bog bridges, the boardwalk bridges from 9 feet wide to 7 feet wide. So when we figured in all of that and the resulting adjustments that are based on the total construction cost, that brought the cost of the project down to 2.149.
Okay, that's not what's being asked for in the article. The article is for $2,134,000. And then paid for $300,000 out of the open space fund, 1.2 million from Community Preservation Act undesignated fund, and borrowing authorization for $634,000. So who knows, don't
Kevin, you're correct. I'll stand corrected. The cost estimate sheet from Ty and Bond that you have in front of you does not reflect an additional $15,000 savings on the raised boardwalk, which we've asked them to, that additional adjustment to be made. And so if you subtract 15 from the 149, that'll bring you to the 134.
Okay.
Is it one boardwalk or two?
Two.
It's two boardwalks, a longer one and a shorter one.
Okay, I only see one here.
You see a short little blue section.
I'm trying to find it.
They only show you one.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't see two there. It says quantity one boardwalk.
Chris, you want to scroll back to the top if you look up?
It's all one item, but it's two sections of boardwalk. One section is approximately 180 feet long, which is the one immediately after you leave the parking lot. So that would be reflected in the upper left-hand corner of the graphic. And then as you follow the trail towards the bridge, you'll see there's a shorter blue section. That's 100 feet long, and that's the section where we have to cross the old canal that fed the Yankee, as we know now, the Yankee Workshop area.
So the 2,500 feet we're talking about is, once you cross the river where the yellow begins, and the yellow goes up and all the way up to, which I assume is all the way to the village,
The parking lot.
that's the 2,500 feet
It's the
section?
the parking
No,
lot.
parking lot's up there in the upper.
No, that yellow.
Yellow starts at our
The
parking lot on
yellow,
Main Street.
the yellow is approximately 850 feet long, and then the color on the Riverlands is about another 800 feet. So at the lower right corner of the Riverlands Trail section, that's where it connects to the existing Grand Trunk Trail, which is in place and brings you out to the Riverlands parking lot, which is directly across the street from Old Sturbridge Village.
My question is, if somebody crosses the bridge, they can go in either direction right now, the trails are available to them?
The trails-
That was my question.
Yeah, okay.
They're different colors, but the trails are
Yeah,
there.
the trails are, that trail exists and is usable today.
So absent the bridge, that trail could be completely developed.
The trail is being used today.
Right, okay. That was.
Got it, okay, sorry.
So can I just
I'm
ask
not colorblind.
one clarification there? You said the yellow was 850 feet long. Is that in total, or is that 850 feet plus the 180 for Boardwalk 1, plus 100 feet for Boardwalk 2?
Tom?
That's in total, including the boardwalks. The total distance from the parking lot to the bridge abutment itself is 850 feet plus or minus a couple feet.
So that 850 feet is pretty much the same cost as the bridge itself?
No, so the two boardwalks and the bridge are about 1.1 million in terms of.
Right, the two boardwalks are 560,000, the bridge is 550.
Right, yes, sorry, I'm sorry, but then the yellow trail and the pink trail on, what are we calling that? The red trail, no, the pink trail on the bottom are the same, about the same length, and those would be both finished. So building the yellow trail and then finishing the surface of the pink trail is the other half the cost. Does that make sense?
The other question I had, the new parking lot on Main Street, it's pretty dense behind that as you look out. You can't see the river from there, it's very dense. Is that heavily wetland in there? Are we gonna have to make accommodations?
That's the first blue section.
Unlike Turner's Field, you can walk right up to the river.
And Turner's Field is a different, yeah, that's a different
It's a
animal.
whole different
Okay.
situation, yeah.
And, you know, anything else?
So, all right, so we went from a project that in total was gonna be roughly $800,000 to a project that's now coming in at 2.3, right? Yeah, 2.3. So what accounts for the difference? So when the article in 2009, right here, we gave you $220,000 to do your engineering study with the promise to the town that it would be $600,000 to finish the rest of it. Well, now that we've done this, we're sitting here at $220,000 already spent and 2.134 million, so we're up to $2.3 million for the project in total. So it's almost tripled. What year was that?
Kevin, Brandon, can I address that?
Oh, 24, I'm sorry, I meant the article.
2024.
Yeah.
So,
June
at
2023.
the time we presented this article, the only numbers that we had, which we gave you, were those numbers that were done by the students from Worcester WPI.
Right.
We had no other studies, no other information to give you when you asked that question, what's it gonna cost? That's the best number we had at that time. Obviously, we've asked for and received the engineering funds to do the engineering design and permitting, and here we are today.
Okay, I get it, and I'm trying to lead you to give me the answer. What you did not expect, from what I'm gathering, is that you were gonna encounter a lot of wetlands that required you to add 2 boardwalks.
No, we knew that.
Oh, you did?
I think, and I'll have to go back to the report, but what sticks in my mind when that report was done by WPI.
Yeah, we have that.
They estimated the cost of the bridge at $91,000. And I had discussions with them at that time that, gee, that sounds awful low. And they came back, including with their professor supervisor. I said, geez, we built the Ed Calcutt Bridge, approximately 10 years earlier, and that cost us $300,000 total. So how is this only $90,000? And they said, well, we looked at the books, and this is what the books told us. I can only give you the information I have, Kevin.
I have a comment. I think, as I look at the Article 11 from 2024, the box itself, not intentionally, but it is misleading, because what it does is it says that the money's for engineering, and then at the bottom it says the bridge is going to cost between $500,000 and $600,000. Also is included there is 2,500 feet of trail. But it doesn't stipulate what it's going to cost to do the 2,500 feet of trail. So that's the missing dollar figure in that box. And I'm not saying, and it's, the fact that it's not there is just an oversight as far as I'm
It
concerned.
was a high-level estimate, more of an order of magnitude from a group that maybe didn't have all the pieces.
It didn't have the 2,500 feet of trail in there, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it sounded like they
And,
knew about
and
it.
not knowing the basis that we probably should have.
Well, whether somebody knew about it or not, it wasn't included, and I'm not going to say that it was left out intentionally. I'm just saying that the highlight was the bridges. The bridge will cost this, and they've done it, but I think was the missing piece back then.
Yeah, we knew that
It's
the
in there now.
Brimfield
It's
Bridge, we knew was, I think at the time, after, was around,
$500,000.
Well, they built it for what, 431 or 413? I always get those numbers reversed. Brimfield, that's on, that's online.
Brimfield's is
I think
It's the same bridge.
the problem is that, the location and the access and so on makes this just a different animal that wasn't, to your point, wasn't,
Differentiation on the Brimfield Bridge. It was placed in a position where a previous bridge had been there, and one of the abutments was still there, so they only had to pour one concrete abutment to install it. So that reduced the cost significantly.
Yeah, but I'm actually based on 2 or 3 years of building,
Yeah,
$550,000
But-
is not a bad estimate.
They had a plot to put if it was already, a bridge had been there before, in Brimfield.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah, bad number, you got a couple more slides?
well, we just gotta finish, we're just gonna jump to the CPC, the actual funding
Off
of
by
the
much.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
So,
No, but I'm just saying that was the piece I didn't understand until tonight. I'm reading this again, and I'm looking at that, and I'm saying, that's what wasn't in here when this was done. It wasn't there, and now I realize that the missing piece is here that wasn't in here, but, and I'm just saying it was, shame on me.
Well,
well,
Not shame on anybody, actually. I'm just saying-
no,
it wasn't left out on purpose to fool anybody.
well, we have a couple of extra slides just to get through, to finish out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, please go ahead.
Are we all set?
yeah, go ahead.
So the taxpayers of Sturbridge have been paying for the trail right along. And what you bring up here is saying that it's gonna benefit the tourism side and that all our businesses are gonna make more money from this. How much does the businesses pay for this bridge?
So, right now, we're looking for funding from CPA funds,
Being
obviously,
from the taxpayers of town Sturbridge.
yes.
If you're a business that owns property and gets a tax bill, you pay a little bit CPC charge in that, right?
Yeah, they pay a little bit, but most of the money's coming from the taxpayers.
Well,
all the
I'll let
money
her
is-
answer that, because it's a different.
If I may.
Yeah, please.
Well, I also wanted to just start by saying thank you for offering us time to revisit this. We greatly appreciate it. We know that doesn't always come easy to get your second look, and we really appreciate it. The taxpayers, I'd like to talk a little bit about the CPA. So the Community Preservation Act was enacted in 2001. Sturbridge was one of the first communities to adopt the act, and we adopted it at the 3% surcharge. So when you say the taxpayers are paying for this, it's on a surcharge for many of the taxpayers, not all. And then the grants and funding that the Trails Committee are like magicians. I don't know how they do it, but they manage to leverage the money that we can get through state, all sorts of grants. So We also get a state surcharge. So if I can talk a little bit about the CPA. The CPA is money that's collected from that surcharge and a state match. And the state match is collected through Registry of Deed transfers. So there's 200 communities now, or up to 200 communities in Massachusetts that have adopted the act. Not everybody gets the same cut from the state. But let me talk first about how it's collected locally. You have a tax bill, you have an assessed home. The first $100,000 of your assessment is exempt. Anything over that $100,000 assessment, you take the cost of the tax on that overage, and 3% of that number is what is on your tax bill as a surcharge.
I understand that.
Okay.
So, back to.
It's still-
Because I wasn't finished, but I was allowing you to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. But I thought,
No. So the businesses don't donate other than their percentage of the CPC surcharge within the community. But,
We've never asked the businesses to contribute.
well, you're promoting this as
No.
that the businesses are gonna promote from it. So I look at it, it's, what you're doing is phenomenal for the town of Sturbridge. Don't get me wrong, I use the trails myself. But when it comes to spending $2.2 million of the taxpayers' money, I feel as though that there should be a joint venture there. If it's going to benefit the business community that much, that it should have, they should be contributing to it. So I think the business, if you're saying businesses have value to this, and they do, you know, I don't know how many people stay here, but when I use the trails, I usually park over in the parking lots over there on the other side of Old Sturbridge Village. And most of the cars that leave there, 'cause I pay attention to that, they all turn right and go back on 84. So it's not like they're turning left and going the other way. So this is only my opinion. And putting this trail in with a parking lot over there. Now, I'm not sure how many cars you're gonna be able to park, maybe 20 cars on the parking lot over on Route 20. And then the other parking lot would be over on the other side of Old Sturbridge Village.
no, it's on the other side of the bridge, so we have a parking lot at the end of that trail.
You're gonna put a parking lot on the trail also?
We have one,
So you're
across the
gonna-
village.
That's where the parking lot is, across from Old Sturbridge Village, is that separate?
Yeah, the one that's across from the village with the sheds and so on.
That's where the bridge is gonna be.
Yeah.
But it's that trail, it connects to that trail.
Right, but
Yeah,
It's still a whole road.
Yeah.
I understand. So, where are they gonna, so it's just gonna be a short trail going from there, because you can't go through Old Sturbridge Village yet to get over to the,
to lead mine. So right now,
well, to Leadmine, you wouldn't be able to, and you wouldn't be able to get over to, the Army Corps of Engineers over at, Westville.
right, not yet.
So there's no connection yet, and there's no way over into Brimfield yet, and yet we're building this bridge. And hoping we're gonna fund the rest of this operation. And get another bridge over 84, or a tunnel, or whatever.
No, we're talking to the state about repainting the bridge right now.
Yeah.
So it takes 5 years, don't get me wrong, you know, but
So, I
we're.
mean, there's a lot of things that we're building this infrastructure, and it seems like an awful lot for the town to pay for.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you done, Mike? If you finish your point, then we'll,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Yeah. I just kind of feel, for me, I just look at it like you're expecting an awful lot from the town to build this whole thing up, because there's a lot more money involved to get them to tie in, not just this bridge. So there's a lot more, I bet you there's another $10 million by the time they're all done, tying in all these bridge, maybe $5 to $10 million, I don't know. If it's $2.5 million to put a bridge there, it's gonna probably be a lot more than that to get, heading south over to, either towards Lead Mine, going to Old Sturbridge Village, and then coming across 84 and tying into the trails over there.
Yeah, I think, trails aren't free.
No,
I'm not, I wasn't taking it like that. I mean, we know we have a lot of trails still to build and a lot of connectivity in town, and the vision we have as a committee is based on the trail master plan, which we've submitted. And so I hear you in terms of, yeah, there are a lot of pieces that we're gonna be working for the next 5 to 10 years on.
I understand, but you're asking the people in the town to fund this, and we've been funding pieces of it. I think I'd like to see what an estimated overall cost and then if projected on 5 to 10 years, or what it's gonna take to finish doing the trails, and what an estimated cost of that would be.
Well, I think the balance of that statement, and I totally hear what you're saying, I think the balance of that is, we don't ask the town, I mean, we ask the town for money, and we get money on certain projects, and we do, but we really focus on getting grants and trying to keep the cost of building trails in this town as low as possible. I think, while, depending on, everybody has a different perspective of, commercial tourism and what that does for Sturbridge, and if this would be of value to that. I think the usage and the people that we're seeing on the trails and that volunteer group that we're talking about is continuing, is very strong right now, and it's something that we feel is going to benefit the town. But I totally respect your opinion.
I think what you're doing is a great job. I'm not saying.
I hear, no, I
I like it. I